Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons Insurance for motoring enthusiasts, Hare and Forbes Machinery House, Pace Farm, Hero Hoists, and Martin's Panel Masters.
Hello and welcome back to another exciting episode of Classic Restos here in Cairns, far north Queensland. Now on today's show, it's another combined episode, and if you are into your classic bikes, well, you're gonna love this. Stick around, you'll see more in just a moment.
It's thanks to Shannons. Ask about multi-policy discounts and sign up for the Shannons Club. Call 134646 for a quote and see more at shannons.com.au. And Hare and Forbes has the range. Buy online at machineryhouse.com.au.
Classic Vincents, BMWs, Ducatis. This is a small boutique museum. It's a small joint. You've got to go outside to make your mind up. But what is inside is amazing. To tell us more, here's Mouse.
My name's Mouse, and I'm the curator and caretaker type of thing of this museum, you know, and I look after it for a friend of mine, and I've been here for 3 years now, since 2014. I restore and maintain all of these motorcycles in the museum. If anything needs doing, I do it, you know, because I've been into motorcycles since I was about 15. It's a great job here. Look what I'm surrounded by is a lot of beautiful old classic motorcycles. We've got a nice selection of Ducatis here, ranging from a, you know, like the early 70s, a GT 750, a Ducati 750 Sport, 900 SS, you know, all models going right through to about 1987. We've got a lovely range of Vincent Black Shadows. We've got 3 actually, and they are one supreme machine, you know. We've got a beautiful BMW R90S that very low Ks, it's like brand new. We've also got another old R51 BMW 1938 that was a local bike bought in Cairns here in that era. We've got a full history on it. It's a beautiful little bike. We also have a little bit of a collection of Kawasaki's. We've got a beautiful rare Triumph X75. There wasn't many of them made, and not many people know that they were even made, you know, as I've been for rides on it and everyone thinks it's a new bike. We've got a Honda CBX Egley, Target Egley actually, what it used to be called back in the day, built by Egley himself. There's only 6 of them in the world, and 2 of them are in Australia. We've got the red one. We've also got the first Honda CB1100R, you know, the half fairing ones, which are very rare, silo seat. They're very hard to find, and it's in perfect condition with very low Ks, about 14,000 Ks on it. A beautiful bike back in its day, and held a few records there at Castrol 6 Hour back in the day. We've got a old BSA Rocket 3, about 1972. It's not too bad, it's still in its original condition. And also a Norton Commando, which is also in its original condition. How I come about loving motorcycles was back in about 1973, and we used to be on a farm and used to have farm bikes, and that's how I learned how to ride. My parents were a bit scared of it because I only knew 2 speeds, fast and stop. And anyway, I bought my first bike back in 1974, a little XL100, and I worked at a motorcycle shop in Tabley and Honda and Mariba. And I worked there for 6.5 years until I sort of felt I needed a bit of a change and get to do my own work, you know, like restorations and whatever. And I I've been doing that ever since.
Now, Mouse, this old Vincent bike here, what is so special about this particular bike?
Well, Fletch, this one's one of the owner's favourite motorcycles. It'll be the only one he keeps. He's had it it's been restored by a fella down in Brisbane. Vincent Black Shadows, they've had records, you know, for a lot of years back in the old days until the Z1 come out, you know, because they're my favourite bike. But anyway, this is one of the best motorcycles ever made.
What year are we talking?
This is 1950, and they had a lot of records back in the day, and I reckon the way they're going these days, they'll be getting them all back.
I've got a few records too. They're all vinyls, Mouse.
Well,
Now, a bike in 1950 compared to this, was it ahead of other bikes? It was one of the better ones?
yes, the Vincent Black Shadows were way ahead of their time, you know, especially having the, 150 mile an hour back in 1950, I think it was.
150 miles an hour.
150 mile an hour.
That's kind of like beyond comprehension, isn't it?
1948.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, speaking of which, Mouse, what powers it?
It's a 1000cc V-twin. They used to be called a HRD, but because of another company, it looked too much like their initials, so they had to change it to a Vincent. And they've got only about probably 55 horsepower standard, but we do have another one here that's got all lightning internals right from the factory, which has got about 25 horsepower more than the rest of them.
Interviewing people on Classic Restos can be a little tough. The amount of work behind the scenes, a lot goes into it. We've got Mouse here, who's a chronic swearer. You can't leave him alone. You've got to be with him all the time, and then a lot of editing has to take place before he can make an episode. Now, to give you an idea, I'm going to show you one sentence from Mouse, and every time he swears, you'll hear the sound of that Vincent's motorcycle horn over his swear word. And that'll give you some sort of an idea as to what I have to put up with sometimes on the job.
Well, Fletch, back in the day, like in the early 70s, they used to make motorcycles round. Everything was round. Well, nowadays, they changed them to square. And I think, well, if it's square, I don't care.
Every weekend around Australia, motoring enthusiasts get together to share their passion for cars and bikes. It's a passion that brings us together. All sorts of people, all sorts of cars and bikes. From the classics of today to the classics of tomorrow. At Shannons, we understand enthusiasts. So when it comes to insurance, it's got to be Shannons. Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts. Call 13 46 46 for a quote.
Here and Forbes Machinery House has been family owned and operated for over 85 years, and it's easy to see why. And with a range like this, you cannot go wrong. Planning on welding? Look at these welding tables and clamps, air compressors and different air tools, sandblasting cabinets, through to spray guns. Everyone is welcome at Machinery House, and they're also open Saturday mornings. Their range of machine tools are workshop tested. There are competitive freight rates around Australia, and you can buy online at machineryhouse.com.au. So remember, Hare and Forbes has the range.
Righto, Mouse, this 1974 Ducati 750 Sport. It's a special bike. Tell us why.
Well, when I was 15 and these were brand new, I used to love them. I always wanted one, but I turned to a Kawasaki Z1, and that was when I was 15, and I've been with one of them ever since. But these are a beautiful bike in their day, and they're still fetching a good bit of money these days.
So what is it about Ducatis that you personally like? Why do they stand out in your eyes?
Well, they bloody don't really. They're a pretty rough sort of piece.
See what I've got to put up with? I've travelled over 3,000 kilometres to come up here to Cairns to help put this place on the map, and I get blokes like Mouse.
But anyway, no, they are a very nice bike. They hold their value. Yes. They're a very good investment. Yes. That's why Steve's got such a big collection here, you know.
But you're still passionate about the Quackers though, right?
Oh yeah, I rode a Cracker 900 when I was 15, and well, when I could afford one, I've had one ever since, and everyone knows me up here to be the sort of Kawasaki king, you know. Yeah, right. That's how Steve and I met, because he's got a bit of a he's got a fetish for Ducatis and Kawasaki Z1s, you know, and yeah, well, they're a beautiful bike too, the best sort of thing ever, you know, ever made that I know of, you know.
So, Mouse, how did you feel when you were approached to look after this collection?
Well, actually, Steve...
Take your time. Yeah. You don't have to answer straight away.
Well, actually, Steve I met Steve years and years ago, but I didn't know about his collection until he started looking around trying to find someone to restore his Z1s. And anyway, when we finally made contact and we've sort of got it to each other on the phone and gone, you know, I've gone, oh, Steve, oh, Mouse, you know, like, good. Anyway, and that's how I got to start restoring all his motorcycles, you know, and I've built most of his Kawasaki's, and I've built the GT Ducati 750 here, and it's come up beautiful. And, you know, he has got other people that do restorations for him, because I won't touch a Black Shadow because that's a special field, you know. Yeah, I'm sort of into a lot of 70s stuff, a lot of things, you know, the early 70s, you know, they're the best, they're my passion.
Back when they used to build things, didn't they?
Yeah, well, that was when I used to walk 20 mile to school carrying a horse, you know, but anyway, that's another story.
You've been a fit bloke in the past, haven't you, mate?
I was. Yeah, they wouldn't let me on the school bus.
They still won't let him anywhere near a school bus. Mouse, it's been a pleasure talking to you, mate. Thank you so much for opening up the museum, the little boutique collection here today for this episode of Classic Restos.
Yeah, well, that's no worries, Fletch. It was a pleasure to sort of meet you too in person.
Yeah, good on you, mate.
It was great.
Right. Well done, Mouse. Now, stick around because we've got a private collector with some cars coming up next on today's episode. Right, thanks, Mouse.
All right, cheers, mate.
Hello, I'm John Chambers. I look after these cars at Cars of Cairns. I've built most of them all myself. I have had a few years with people that were helping me do it. It's a hobby now. I just look after the cars. We set up the business 12 years ago because the owner of the place, Ted Spalding, he had two cars that he couldn't get converted or made go. He approached me to whether we could start a business together and do it. So this is virtually what it is. These cars here are all virtually handmade. Everything we have a lot of trouble up here of being able to buy the parts. We can get them out of America, but a lot of them weren't right-hand drive when we started doing it. Now they're making them right-hand drive parts for them with a lot of options you can put into it. We've tried to keep the cars as standard as possible. It's a love job. This is about the only way you can put it. We've done customers' cars, we've built a few outside customers' cars, and as far as I know, they're very happy with the cars that we've built. Well, they've come back and said they were, so that's about all I can say about it. But the rest of the things, they come in here, they are a wreck when we buy them. In most cases, they are falling apart. They're cars that you'd never start with, and we pull them all apart, rebuild them, put all new chassis in them, floors, front ends, rear ends, do the motors, the gearboxes and diffs, and make them better than new. We modify the cars a bit. Firewalls are all handmade, the dashes are all handmade. Everything on the cars is virtually, well, I spend a lot of time doing it because it's more of a love job than a business, which is pretty hard to explain to somebody that's trying to make money, but you know, that was one of the reasons why we've only got what we've got. You know, you can build them if you've got 10 or 12 young blokes doing it and they've all got a love for it. You can throw a car together very quick. But when you start getting a bit older, the quickness disappears, you know. But that's about the way it is. I started off in '63 as an apprentice. I used to did all my apprenticeship, and for another 10 years after that I worked on all Ford Motor Company's rally cars. Classic cars to me are a thing, how can I put it? They're an era that I lived my life in. A Mustang was a car that you dreamed of. You know, it was one of those things. You had Steve McQueen drive one in Bullet, and oh geez, the eyes come up and you saw Bullet 100 times, you know, just to see the car chase. And that's virtually classic cars of the 60s, early 70s. I like that range, and the late 50s, I enjoy that range of car. More on the American side than the Australian side. I've had the Australian Falcons and GTs and all this sort of stuff. But I enjoy the Mustang. That's virtually the car I enjoy playing with. This '59 Cadillac, it came here, we bought it out of America, and it looked a reasonable car. Then when we got it here, the reasonable car turned into a bucket of, you know, I won't go any further on that one. It was pretty bad. The floors, pulled the carpet off the floor and there was no floor underneath it. The bottom of the doors had all rusted out, the boot, the whole lot. So it all had to be handmade. At that stage, we couldn't buy panels for them. We had to make them all. I had a fella here then that was very good at making panels, and that's just the end result. As you have seen by going around the car, it's pretty well, there's not too many better than it. And it was just one of those things that we started to do. We left it left-hand drive because we thought it most probably, it's more iconic that it's left-hand drive.
My passion for cars began when Nana and Pop bought their new Toyota Crown. It was Nana's really. She loved that car. We went everywhere in it. My passion now is just the same, even though my cars are a little different. I've still got Nana's car, couldn't part with it. And I reckon if she was here today, she'd be insured with Shannons too.
Call Shannons on 13 46 46. Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts.
If you have a restoration project, Hare and Forbes has the tools that you need. Look at these restoration products: shrinker stretchers, dollies, mallets, bead rollers, profile gauges, professional panel restoration kits, and so much more. Now I warn you, enter at your own risk because you will end up buying something. So come along to your Cap City store or browse and buy online at machineryhouse.com.au because Hare and Forbes has the range.
This '65 Mustang here, we bought it out of America. We bought 3 cars at the time. We bought a '68 convertible, a '67 fastback, and this one. We thought we'd bought ourselves a reasonably good car. The back guard had been replaced. They did a good job on replacing the guard, but how it was connected to the rest of the car was a bit of a problem. It was held on with Tech screws. The subframe was down 1.5 inches. And it must have been a car that had a lot of different motors in it because the floor had been cut around something shocking. We had to make it all. It was missing a few of the panels inside, so we managed to get hold of everything and then build them. Now it's a right-hand drive, all the handmade, all the firewalls handmade, the dash is handmade. It's got an integrated air conditioning units in it. It is a little bit different to the average one. The engine is a 289, and it's as it came. When we got this car, it had the exhaust out the side and somebody had played with the motor and we thought, oh geez, we're going to have to do something about this. At the cam, it wouldn't idle, it wouldn't do anything when we got it. The automatic was so tight, it was the thing. Then when we converted it, we thought, oh, well, we'll put the motor in it and see how it goes. So we left the motor. The motor hasn't been touched since we've done it, and the transmission hasn't been touched. We put it in there, and it was just a matter of tuning it to get it to run right. Apart from that, it's pretty well as we bought it.
So tell me, John, where do classic cars go back with you?
Where do they go back? I virtually did my whole time with classic cars. I was brought up on them, building the Ford Motor Company rally cars back in the 60s. Yep. Then I moved on to privateers in the 70s. I finished doing that in about 77, I think it was, when I got married. And I moved to Cairns in 80 and just started as a mechanic up here. And then...
You're obviously not affected by the heat.
No, love it. That was the reason I left down there, to get warm.
What was your first memory of a classic car? Like when you were when you were a little guy, what's the first car?
The first memory I remember was a British Racing Green Mustang. It must have been about a 66 model Mustang. We did it for an economy run up to Sydney for the Ford Company. And they drove it up to Sydney, and we made it with modification to it. We'd put the filler inside the boot. Yep. Now, in those days, when they did the conversions, they were done I think in Canada, and they came out and they had tar around everywhere. It was the boot was virtually full with tar, sealed. It wasn't going to leak. And so the filler, because it was an economy run, we put it in the inside, rather than the Mustang one that you could get to. The big boss of Ford went to Sydney and wanted to drive the Mustang back. It was the classic car.
Because these would have been untouchable cars for you guys, to go and buy one.
Yes, no, you didn't. Yeah. You didn't get it. I was very lucky in those days. And the big boss of Ford gets into it. And the first thing he does is drives into a service station and says, "Fill her up." Goes in and gets a meal at the thing. Bloke comes in, he says, "What size tank you got in there?" He says, "I put 60 gallons in it and it's still going." So they went out there and had a look, and nothing was on the ground. So they pulled opened the boot, and here's 60 gallons of fuel in the boot of the car.
Like a swimming pool.
Like a swimming pool.
Oh my God, the things you hear.
That was virtually my first thing with the classic cars, and then customers had all the big ones.
Now, John, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for having myself and Donnie Blanford over there, the owner of Atherton Auto Wreckers, who's been absolutely tremendous organising these episodes, the interviews. Thanks for having us around. Love your little showroom here. Everywhere I look, everything is just so immaculate, and be a lot of, I know people watching would be thinking, wow, wish my shed looked like that.
Yes, well, that is the one thing I've done all my life. Is I started off as a mechanic, learning how to wash the floor and wash parts, and I've been that way ever since. Yeah. Everything's got to be spotless. I'm not happy unless it's...
That's one thing about getting around and speaking to people like yourselves and seeing workshop areas. It's inspiration. I mean, you get thoughts, right? Yeah. And you can hopefully incorporate that into your own man cave at home. All right, good on you there, John.
Thanks, Fletch. Very nice. Thank you for the interview.
You are more than welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Well, how was that for an episode with a difference? We had Mouse and his classic bikes, and just around the corner, well, we had John at the helm of this classic car collection here in Cairns, doing an awesome job as well. Now, on next week's episode of Classic Restos, there's another special feature here in Cairns to share with you. Until then, no matter where you're watching Classic Restos from, please ride and drive safe. I'm Fletch, and I thank you very much for watching. You can like and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/ClassicRestosTV and watch catch-up episodes at shannons.com.au. Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons Insurance for motoring enthusiasts, Hare and Forbes Machinery House, Pace Farm, Hero Hoists, and Martin's Panel Masters.